Hey everyone, and welcome back to Pro AV. We live in a world that relies heavily on digital connections. And as that continues to increase, so do the risks. So I brought on somebody today to talk about just that and how we're seeing digital security and cybersecurity become at the forefront of AV conversations. Joining me now is Mark Lynd from NetSync. Mark, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ben. I appreciate it.
You know, Mark, the threat of cyber attacks and digital attacks has never been higher. Some of that really comes from the fact that we live in a post-COVID world where we're just on the computer more, we're distributing more data, more content. But, you know, as somebody who's seen it really for a while in the industry, where does it feel like we are right now? I mean, is this something that is unprecedented, where we have the amount of cyber attacks that we've kind of had over the last year? Or is this something that's kind of been on trend for the last few years?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I think when you see from the corporate or public sector, private sector world, you're seeing digital transformation. Every business out there is looking for some way to become digital, right? So you have that happening. At the same time, you have new generations of kids and all that are growing up in the digital world, and it's their first choice for news, how to get to places. All the things that used to be non-digital are now digital. And with that, it increases the attack surface. It multiplies the number of threat vectors. And you're just seeing a huge, huge impact out there. And I think one of the things, is going to have to happen. And, I've seen some people's quote, that it's doubled the amount of bad actors and bad nefarious activity online between year after year, and they're actually expecting that to expand as more generations come in and are digital, and those that aren't, move along the timeline, and as more and more organizations, especially in third world countries and other countries where they may not have as much digital transformation, as they start to come online. So we're going to see internet growth, we're going to see generational differences bringing forth, and we're going to see massive digital transformation both here as in other parts of the world, and that's just going to really make a huge impact.
Well, I think it's important to level set here while we're having this conversation, Mark, is, typically when you think cyber attack, you're thinking about some guy trying to hack into the White House on his computer, but that's really not the reality of the cyber challenges of America, really in the world right now, is it?
No, it's not. And everybody always has that guy that's wearing the hoodie and there's a pizza box and he's got like 3 monitors and he's hacking and he's got, the Matrix on TV over here to the left. That's just not real. These are very sophisticated, organized groups, gangs, whatever you want to, designate them. But many of them are state sponsored. There's lots of states out there, both ones you would suspect and ones you wouldn't, that are using that to bring money in and help pay for government programs that may or may not be sanctioned or approved by the international community. And we're seeing that a lot. In fact, with the thing with Ukraine and Russia right now, it was a very measured response. It started out with the hackers. They went 2 weeks before it happened. Russia went and got all the hackers, some of the rebel folks and all that, and took them off, right? I don't know if they imprisoned them or what they did, but they took them off the map. And the reason why is they didn't want them escalating things without Putin and his regime having control. Similarly, when Anonymous and a bunch of these out here that are more pro-West oriented started attacking them, none of them went over 6 gig. If you look at what typical DDoS attacks are, they're 50, 100 gig or more, right? Some of them unrestricted, as much as they can get. And so this was a very measured response, and we're still seeing that. There's a report today that it's starting to hit banks, and I got a briefing with the DoD last week, and they were talking about some of the things that are starting to see some changes. But that's a perfect example of that piece where this no longer the guy with the pizza box that was made famous with the Matrix and other the hackers and all those other shows. It's really a very sophisticated group of well-trained, well-financed that are making a real impact out in the world. They're taking that money and growing their capabilities.
Well, you bring up an interesting point, and I think, there's really 2 responses that our audience may have to that is, one, hey, that doesn't apply to me because I'm not a country, right, or I'm not a Fortune 500 company, or obviously to invest heavier into the cybersecurity side. But let's talk to the audience real quick who thinks that maybe there's a little bit less application, maybe the small, medium-sized business, maybe the smaller studio production house. What are some of the things that you're seeing on that level, really that people should actually be very, very cautious and knowledgeable about?
Yeah, I'll give you a perfect example of one. So in the public sector, K-12s, right? K-12s go from pre-K to 12th grade. Many of them don't have a very big IT staff. They don't have a lot of money, put forward to that. And they're taking care and they're, teaching people and doing things that are in need, right? These are a lot of these schools, they provide lunches, they do all this stuff. And so here's a type of organization that you wouldn't think they would want to hit, right? You're not only you doing something nefarious, but you're also hitting those that are in need, and you're hurting the children. You would think that would be off limits. In fact, that is not the case at all. Since 2018, over 1,260 K-12s in the United States have been hit with ransomware or other types of attacks. And that has grown each year. That's grown a little bit more. And so we're seeing schools now having to take, extra precautions, do that. And I think it's very similar in the consumer market where you see people that don't think they're going to get hit. Now you're seeing, the porn threat attack, that they were just online, they hit the wrong link and it says, hey, I got pictures of you, which is totally bogus. Or you see the thing around Bitcoin, right? And all kinds of pieces around that. And there's so many more. And the level of sophistication and the capabilities of these, especially the 0 days, are the ones that take a while for, the anti-malware and anti-virus folks to catch up. Those are making a great impact. And unfortunately, to your point, it's hitting people people that you wouldn't suspect. It's the elderly, it's the young children. And the reason why, if you need a reason why, because it's pretty simple. They pay. They're going to pay. They're more likely to pay. That's really the only designator. Can you pay and are you likely to pay? That's all they really care about. Now, some of the state sponsored, it's more nefarious. I mean, they're going after water supplies like they did the one in Florida, or they're looking at examining or probing the power grid. So there's things like that that can be really nasty, but it's really the ones in need, the ones that you would think would be off limits that they're hitting quite a bit now.
Well, Mark, I was having a similar conversation. You brought up K-12 with our friends over at Identity Automation, and they mentioned that one of the things that contributes to inaction is more apathy than anything else. How are you seeing people overcome apathy right now? And is it through learning? Is it through training? But what are some of the ways that you're seeing some of these IT managers and school districts who have never had these conversations overcoming some of that apathy?
Yeah, I think part of it is, there's a level of training. No matter how well the IT group and the security folks within that group take care of that K-12, the reality is with remote learning or remote work, now they've maybe tripled, quadrupled their attack surface. And now there's all these other attack vectors. Now you're counting on the home Wi-Fi or the Wi-Fi at Starbucks where they're doing homework, or all these multitude of other things. So for them to overcome, and with all that additional stress and all that contributes to that apathy, right? That, oh, well, they're not going to hit me. I can get on here. I can do this. But the reality is that every one of them is a weak link. And it sounds horrible to say that, but that is in fact the truth. It only takes one to click on the wrong link. It only takes one to go to the wrong site. It only takes one, right, to open that attachment they shouldn't have opened. And it's going to impact the entire group. And after a while, security folks, sending the message, using KnowBe4 and tools like that to do proactive training, they just get tired of it, right? It's like anything else. How many times you got to tell me what the alarm code is? How many times you got to tell me the keys? Blah, blah, put one under the mat. All the stuff we used to do physically is now doing that online in the digital world. And that apathy is definitely creeping in. It is definitely a problem. And one, I don't think we've really, as an industry, come up with a good answer or a good set of answers.
Well, one of the challenges too, Mark, is as we expand into a more digital world, and we're seeing this in AV right now like crazy. As we're expanding, we're bringing in the IT managers, we're bringing in the IT decision makers, installers, integrators, but those are people who have to service industries over industries, right? Whether it's AV, whether it's education, whether it's enterprise solutions. the burden actually now is falling a lot more on the IT community to educate, someone like me over on the Pro AV side who's installing an entire control room that's based on network connectivity. The burden right now, it feels like really is having to come from the integrator side. How do you educate those people who normally are more specifically reliant on, we'll call it product or hardware training, to now have to educate people on best practices for network connectivity?
Yeah, I have two really good use cases around that. One is there's an SEC school, one of the largest out there, huge stadium, and we're redoing a lot of the technology in that stadium. ESPN has its own little studio down there. They have their own huge studios. And as you can imagine, it's a money-making machine, right? It pays for a lot of the school above and beyond, football and sports. And in that, one of the things we went in there with them is trying to tell them, hey, look, here's the things you need to do. But if you do this, it comes with consequences. So, if we run all that fiber for you so you can shoot out the multiple streams of digital video, you now have to secure it. You're going to have some best practices wrapped around that to understand what that means. Other people that interact with the technology are going to have to understand how to do that and not violate these policies so that you can provide that in a secure, safe, and thoughtful manner. And it could be anything from, like you said, somebody could pop up in a video, right? Somebody can substitute a piece in there. The inside threat is just as big as the outside threat. And oftentimes it's a lot softer as far as security coverage. So those things are very important. Another case is there was a K-12 down the valley in South Texas, and they don't have a lot of people, don't have a lot of money. Well, they actually do the AV stuff for the football stadium and for the basketball and the track and all the sports. The IT people do that, so they do their normal job, and they also have to do the AV duty. So I was in there visiting with them, and we were talking about some, particular networking gear. And they're like, okay, well, we got to wrap up our meeting because we got to head to the stadium and get set up for a night's football game. And I was like, okay. And I go, well, what's the security? You don't just leave the stuff sitting in the back of the truck with everybody having access to it. And you don't leave it up there, come back and work and leave it up. Oh, yeah, we do. And I'm like, so they have a digital security issue. They have a physical security issue. There's just all kinds of things. And, whether it's a bunch of kids in high school wanting to do a prank, seemingly harmless, but we know those can get out of control sometime. I might have done one or two of those when I was young, and who knows? Or it's something more nefarious. That is a real possibility. And that's just two examples. I'm sure if you and I sat here talking about this for another hour, we'd come up with 10 more.
Well, it's an interesting point that you bring up too, because when we talk about ESPN and production houses and networks, those actually are starting to get more attacked on a more regular basis. What's the power now of being able to hold Netflix and all of their content for ransom, or being able to shut off an ESPN stream, or being able to shut off the Super Bowl to, Peacock or wherever it's streaming? The power of content control now is incredible. Talk to me about some of those things when you're building those installations, like the SEC. What are some of those contingencies that you guys are building in place and rolling out within the system?
Yeah, I think in education, whether it's higher ed or K-12, doesn't matter. You have things like content keepers and all that, where it screens and filters, and that stuff's been going on since the late 1990s. But it's become very sophisticated now, right? Giving access out, allowing content to go in and out or be transferred or manipulated, that type of thing. Now that's still a problem, and one that they have to deal with because it's a changing environment, just like all the rest of the pieces you and I were talking about. There's digital transformation, there's more of that, there's more content, there's more open, and a lot of people are taking unstructured content and putting it out on Box or putting it out, in areas where the organization has no tracking, no knowledge of that content. So that creates a problem. And then here's the part that really makes it terrifying and why it is a target. Because they often use fiber. When you're talking about moving digital content, it tends to be large, right? And you have to have the transport for that. Typically, it's some level of fiber. Also, they need high processing compute environments to render that material, do all the things they have to do with that. So those environments tend to be very good places where you can go out and put malware and put things so it can be part of those attacks, even like DDoS attacks or things like that. So if you don't have a web application firewall, if you don't have content keepers, if you don't have some of those tools along with some best practices around it, you probably will find some issues. In fact, FedEx machines are a target. So a lot of corporations have FedEx machines to make it easier for them to ship packages, right? UPS as well. And you find that those become often places where they use those to create DDoS attacks, store bad material, nefarious things, hide their activities. So those became very popular for a while, and it goes in and out of popularity.
Well, those are all great points, Mark, and I appreciate you giving us context into that too. And but I'd be remiss. Hey, we're in a generation now. We're in a time where you hear things like blockchain and NFTs and digital security on digital wallets, and whether or not you agree that's going to be the future, that's fine. But the reality is there is going to be more of that. Just quickly, give us a couple of tips where us nerds can keep all of our stuff safe.
Yeah, look, the crypto market, NFTs, all those pieces. There is a lot of bad actor activity going on there. A lot of fraud. I think when a lot of these NFTs, you've heard some of the ones that Machine Gun Kelly and others have bought that ended up not being worth a dang, right? Right. You see a bunch of that type of thing going on. I think we'll see more of that. The other thing is, it's very easy to create content. For some people, the content doesn't have to be great. It just has to be something somebody can sell, and that in itself creates a very potentially nasty environment. And I think everybody should proceed with caution. They should go to and use sites to buy NFTs, to do crypto type of activities, those type of things like Solar and all that they use to transact those pieces. I think people have to be very careful and thoughtful about that. Be very careful about where you buy it, where you store it. I mean, people are getting their crypto stolen all the time. And what's so sad about it is you can see who the person is, right? You can often track their IP that are transacting the NFTs on that platform. So so you're just creating a threat vector, right? So don't be bragging about it. Take precautions. Be thoughtful. Use a third party or use a tool where you're banking it and you're taking it offline when it's not being used for that places. As far as NFTs, where they digitally sign those and they do it with a reputable site that does that is a very, very important piece. I think a lot of those NFTs, these digital signature issuers, are people that are not great, or they're in it and they're out, and they they do a bunch of NFTs, they get paid and they move on, right? And and then that leaves the people that bought the NFTs and the people who sold them in a very bad place. And we're seeing lots of fraud. And then you get into the deep fakes, and we can go on. They could do a whole show on deep fakes, because it is it's such a big market right now, and people are seeing what you can do. And you can be a layman. You don't even have to be that talented anymore with these new GUIs they have. You're able to do some really impressive deep fakes with very little knowledge.
Well, Mark, I know some of my friends out in Hollywood right now aren't too thrilled about that either, because their job just got much easier. So now some guy on the street can do it for $20. But with that, Mark, we appreciate you for hopping on today. I know our Pro AV audience is very, very grateful for your insight and your knowledge, and we hope to have you back on the show.
Oh, man, appreciate it so much, and enjoyed everybody watching. Thank you.